$10,000 to put up. Bring faucet, come up, education center. It wasn't even, there's no week making daycare staff anymore.
I remember having that whole discussion, it wasn't possible to take somebody to court. Obviously, that's not true, because they did what? You could almost have the form pre-printed and just fill in the specifics, you know what I mean?
You know, closed bin sharing is something similar to that.
I know that.
But that's fine. I want to say it was like $10
The ornament collection going.
each shelf was like rags, you know. And it took me like a minute.
Well, she's tall enough to choose.
So you call them.
Oh, yeah, they don't know how to spread it out.
It's doing before 7:30. Passed out there.
Yeah, that's good. Everybody's working out.
Yeah. She has her burst of energy in the morning, mid-afternoon, she has a couple naps. We have a little bit of time in the evening and she's out.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's doing better than most.
She does, she's just tired of it. The fatigue.
Am I?
That's what my sister and my dad.
It's okay. Okay, I got it. Okay.
I'm up there 3 days a week.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Morrisville Borough Council Agenda Meeting of December 11th, 2018. If you'll all please rise for a moment of silence and our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a roll call, please, Virginia.
Mayor Rivella. Councilman Bowers.
Here.
Councilman Drysdale.
Here.
Councilman Rydell.
Here.
Councilman Madison.
Here.
Councilman Nay.
Here. Here.
Councilman Smith.
Here.
Councilman Yeager.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, tonight we don't have any announcements, so we're going to just go right into public comment. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes if you can. And we'll begin with Cynthia Cicero. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Cynthia Cicero, 606 Prospect Avenue. I am a tax-paying resident, and the way I perceive recent events is this. We hired an individual as borough manager who now seems to have been underqualified for this position in certain areas, so much so that he hired a finance director at the cost of the taxpayers to handle financial matters. A significant portion of his duties now removed. Why is he still a full-time employee? Wouldn't he better serve the taxpayers on a part-time basis? The cost of these 2 full-time positions is over $200,000 plus benefits. This is a financial burden the taxpayers of Morrisville can ill afford. And in my hands, I hold the 2019 wage data sheet. Is this correct? Did the borough manager actually authorize himself, the financial director, and other managers a 3% raise when we cannot afford to fully fund the police department? How does he find money for upper echelon management raises when he is making public safety sacrifices by laying off police officers due to financial shortfalls? I'm a 40-year resident of this town. I'm enraged by this. I do not want, I repeat, I do not want my tax monies used for the borough manager's and finance director's personal financial gain while there is not enough money for the police. Members of council, if you endorse these raises, you are seemingly as guilty as he is in the misuse of my tax monies. Thank you, and I will see you next week.
Thank you. Robert Perry? State your name and address for the record, please.
Robert Perry, 606 Prospect Avenue. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. After reviewing the budget, there were many questions that I have, but unfortunately, this really isn't the forum, and we don't have the time to kind of go through line items. But I have the same concerns that other people be getting up here and talking about that we've heard before in reference to the borough manager position as it escalated from years ago as a part-time position to a full-time position to adding a financial director position. So, I'd like to know what the actual job descriptions are of these individuals and if there's any duplication and how this escalated to this point. It seems we're increasing costs, but we're looking at reducing police department and other borough employees. So to add a financial director, it just didn't seem fiscally sound to me. On the wage data sheet, as Cynthia said, there's a 3% increase. At this time, if we're looking at having cost issues, I think there should be a freeze on all upper management, council members, where there's no increases until we find out what's going to happen with this decrease in revenue. What is taking place to look at increasing revenue next year? What has the borough manager and other people have done to say, okay, we've got this wound that's bleeding, we're putting a Band-Aid on it, but next year the wound gets bigger, we're going to put another bigger Band-Aid, more police laid off, more borough people laid off. What is council and the borough manager doing to increase revenue? At this time, I think it's a point of where people are getting upset. So we've decided to basically form a committee, a watchdog committee made up of business people, citizens, business owners, property owner, and we're going to be at every meeting. And we will support people that are on council when it's time to get reelected. I'm a Republican, but I voted Democrat and Republican. I will vote for the person who's going to do the best for Morrisville. This will be a committee that will help you get elected. If you're on and you're not from Morrisville and you're taking personal agendas on who doesn't like the police chief because someone else on the board wants to get their friend in, it's not going to happen. You've got to come to us because we're going to go door to door. We're going to get signatures. And these are people of business. We want to bring new business into Morrisville. People aren't going to come here with police deductions. Not going to happen. So in February, we'll present to you this new committee, and we like to work with you, and we hope that we can all hit 2019 in a little bit better stride. Again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays.
Thank you. Christopher Coteau, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Christopher Coteau, 473 Hamilton Boulevard. Good evening, members of council. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I know it's been a very rough budget season for you all, and I'm hoping for a balanced budget without any tax increase, police, or borough layoffs. I credit President Smith for getting the budget out on time this year. It's the first I've seen in 5 years. I've reviewed the latest budget, which is balanced, but it slashes many line items in the police and borough budget. This is not what I requested at the last meeting from the borough manager or his finance director. As an independent voter, follower of the previous 4 years of budget negotiations here, this latest budget is lacking funds in many areas. For example, you've gone from $65,000 to zero for the Morrisville Police Department Legal Services line item. While the chief is very good about keeping litigation down, you cannot expect any police department not to incur some legal expenses. How will the Morrisville Police Department pay for litigation this coming year? I firmly believe that the latest budget is lacking in many areas, partly due to Mr. Mitchell's enormous raise and the addition of a finance director position at around $75K. Council majority, while I fully appreciate you bringing in the professional services of a financial director position, thank you, sir, for doing that. You're doing a great job. We just can't afford it. Hiring Mr. Mitchell, who's often here at Borough Hall till 8, 9 o'clock, wonderful job. We just can't pay you that much. I strongly encourage council to downsize the borough manager's raise and eliminate the finance director position. I'm going to ask you again to say no laying off one police officer or the borough employee. We cannot afford to lose staff in either area. The Morrisville Police Department should be staffed at around 20 full-time officers. When Mr. Mitchell can find new revenue from other sources and that we can afford financial service, please bring the gentleman right back, because they're both awesome, in my opinion. But we can't afford this increase. Mission-critical positions, such as police officers, should never be laid off before non-mission critical positions. A finance director position in the Morrisville Borough is not mission critical. We simply cannot afford it. On a different note, I wish you to reconsider the 30-hour part-time officer police cap and extend it to the maximum weekly hours allowed by law. This will enable the chief to fully utilize the part-time staff resource. As an example, surrounding towns have their limits. At Bristol, 36 hours a week. Tullytown, no limit. Newtown Borough, 32 hours a week. Thank you for your time. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy and safe New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. John Pastor. State your name and address for the record, please.
John Pastor, 25 Dieter Avenue. I understand we're going to be getting rid of one police officer, and that's going to be the motor carrier enforcement. Is that correct?
We can't talk about who. That's up to the chief who that is. He does the.
Okay.
We don't talk about the positions.
Once again, I'm against that. And if they do remove him, I can't see this saving any money, because with the amount of fines that people have talked about, we're eliminating a position and not saving any money. I'm from Ward 1. Mr. Eisbach campaigned on truck safety, rerouting the trucks, and I would like to address her as that was your campaign. And if we get rid of this position, this is public safety with the trucks by not being able to pull them over and inspect them. I think this is a bad move on all the parts by eliminating that position. Second of all, we're back to cutting more jobs with the borough workers. Again, this is repetitious. I say this every month, twice a month. Public safety, fire safety, the snow, the grass, the appearance. We got to find money from other places to offset that. In that same regard, my street, once again, is still sinking. I don't want to turn into an emergency like the one up where they got to find funding to fix it. It's still sinking. What else? I come home the other night and saw a big crane boom down at the Tate Lyle, the old Staley's facility. I understand they're tearing down 75% of that facility. It's going on now. They're wrecking ball in the big cement towers down there. I'd like to ask somebody about dust. The air quality, I don't know what's in those buildings. They've been vacant for a long time. I don't know if there's asbestos or chemicals, if that's something to look into. But that's also a big tax base that we're going to lose next year. Go ahead.
She's just timed. She
Oh,
says
okay.
a timer, yeah, that's all.
We should look into that just for public safety, a health hazard. I don't know if there's who we would talk to see where all this dust is going to go. It's several hundred feet in the air that they got a wrecking ball smashing concrete and God knows what else. But we're going to lose a lot of tax money with all they tear those buildings down. They're going to be paying taxes on grass. So, and that's about it. Because once again, I'm against cutting the borough workers, cutting the police force for public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Wilson? You state your name and address for the record, please.
Donna Wilson, East Post Road. Real quick, first I want to thank Corinne for crowning. Let me just say, I know I should probably be doing this at a different meeting, but I don't know if I'll be able to attend. So first I want to thank Corinne for crowning the 3 Miss Junior Winterfest girls. My mother's very ill. I was out of town, and I appreciate you doing that for us. That being said, I hope everybody enjoyed the Winterfest parade, and thank you to those of you on the board, the council who decided to march with us and join in. December 7th, 2019, that's the first Saturday in December next year. So can council approve and put that on the calendar as our Winterfest day for next year?
December 7th, correct?
December 7th, that's the first Saturday in December.
Thank you.
I also want to thank the chief and the department that helped with the parade. They helped with the parade. They directed the traffic. They kept us all of us who marched in the parade safe from the traffic, and we appreciate them. With that being said, if the chief and the department have to, so if the police, let me just go back. If we have to cut police, and can the council tell me how that's going to affect our parade? How's that going to affect our costs? What's that going to do to that? Ms. Dreisbach, living in the first ward, I have a question for you. As was said earlier, you ran your campaign on our truck traffic down South Pennsylvania Avenue. There's been a lot of progress during the day with the truck traffic, and I think it has a lot to do with Officer Lunar, who puts in a lot of time battling our truck traffic. And if we have a cut, what's that going to do? You know how it is, Eileen. You know how South Pennsylvania Avenue is. If we take that officer away, what's that going to do? Because there's been progress, and it's now going to end. The progress is going to end. And also to council, I truly think it's just common sense. If you make personnel cuts to Morrisville Police Department, you're just opening up our town's doors and you're asking trouble to come in. So please don't do that. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Jane Berger? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Jane Berger, 90 West Maple Avenue. Good evening. Although there have been differences expressed regarding some of the proposed personnel staffing changes in the 2019 budget, I am gratified to see that the posted proposed final budget does not propose any tax increase to the residents. And even those residents that have spoken out throughout this process and expressing their concerns and offering recommendations also felt changes, if there were adjustments, could be made, but no one advocated for a tax increase. So again, I support the residents, and they're looking at the budget to see whatever happens will not require a tax increase. In fact, it's even more important because this year our school board just increased your taxes 6 and tiny fraction mills, which is the 2.9% they're allowed. And that discussion really needs to be more people to go to the school board and find out how they're trying to manage their budget and educate our kids with their financial limitations. Regarding the police officer, I remember at the last meeting, in response to a question when there was one officer less because of retirement, And the chief did state that all the shifts were covered and the motor carrier enforcement, the truck safety program continued, didn't have to be stopped. And afterwards, I'm thinking, well, during a portion of that time, we also had an officer. We support special drug enforcement in other areas. And in an incident where we participated up in the Doylestown area, unfortunately, our officer was injured and was out on workman's compensation for an extended period of time and then came back on limited duty, and there was an overlap. So this time when there were 2 officers left on patrol, the truck enforcement was able to be continued. And I'm just wondering now why, if this has to be a reduction in 1 police officer, why the chief is deciding that this officer has to go back on patrol and can no longer do truck enforcement at any amount, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 days a week. So I'm just not understanding why it can continue when you're down 2 and not if you're only down 1, if that has to happen. But I'm really here tonight to speak more about the SRO officer at the school. As you know, this was a COPS-funded position. The school district came to the council and requested this. As a COPS grant, it had to come through the borough. This officer, although he's stationed at the school, is a borough police officer. The 3 years of partial funding ends, I believe, in January, and there's an agreement between the school district and the borough to continue the funding for the 4th year that grant requires. My concern is the school is not giving you an answer as to whether they're going to honor this agreement or not. You need to go to the school board meeting tomorrow night at 7:30 in the LGI room of the high school and tell the school district if you think this officer is important. Should they abide by the 4 years ended in June 30th? Not continue it at all and send you the required 30-day written notice? And what is their plan to continue an SRO type position? Maybe it should be something that eventually is fully funded by the school district, because when we're struggling with our own officers on street patrol, we really should not subsidize the school district's safety of our children. It is their responsibility during school hours. They are proactive, and I'm sure they want to keep our children safe, but not at the subsidy by the borough. Please go to the school board meeting tomorrow evening and let them know your thoughts and ask these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Walter Schwedes? Please state your name and address for the record, please. I hope I pronounced that right.
Close enough. My name is Walter Schwedes, and that's okay. Everything but late to dinner, that's all.
You're used to it, huh?
Okay, I live at 42 West Maple. My wife and I retired recently, and we just bought a retirement home on Maple Avenue. And I would just like to make a couple of comments as a newbie to town. I don't know the history. I don't know a lot of the people yet. I'm working on it. But one of the things that influenced us to retire here was that the town was affordable and the quality of life was good. The streets were taken care of. The parks were taken care of. Okay, it seemed that the borough was taking care of its residents and the physical needs of the neighborhoods. But also, a big part of the quality of life was the fact that public safety was also reputed to be very good, and we saw evidence of that. Now, my wife and I are both very concerned because with the troubles in the ambulance corps, and that are fairly recent, and then the proposed cuts to the police department, that to us is an alarming transition, an alarming change. We're not ready to just blow out of town yet. We can't do that. But it is something that we are very concerned for. I'd like to make basically own up to the fact that my oldest boy is a cop. He's a Pennsylvania state trooper. He's in eastern Pennsylvania. And I get a lot of insights from him about Pennsylvania law enforcement. One of the things that he tells us is that if you're at a minimum level of staffing on the road, that means if one cop gets tied up, then you only have one. And if there's a situation that may be dangerous or you don't know, but you're not sure going in, you need backup. I mean, that's just simple a good part of public safety so that they can do their job, but it also deals with the safety of the police officer himself or herself. My son tells me that the average time for a state trooper to, okay, I'm sorry, I am loquacious and I start talking and I can't shut up, but I'll just continue just for another second. It takes 20 or 30 minutes to get back up, and a lot can happen in 20 or 30 minutes. Whereas if you have full staffing here locally, that's less likely to happen. We feel very strongly that keeping the police force at its current staffing level, with 10, is absolutely, I think is absolutely necessary. Thank you for your time and for listening to me, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close public comment at this time. There's only a couple things that I'm going to answer. The $65,000 cut from the legal line in the police budget was actually asked to be taken out by the police chief when we were at the budget meeting, because it was put in there and he said we weren't going to need that much money to be put in there, so it was cut out. Oh, well, it was. I sat next to you.
He didn't ask that to go down to 0. He asked to go to 25.
I'm sorry. I'm just stating what happened at the meeting, and I'm just giving quotes. This isn't a debate. I'm just answering. The sinking hole or whatever you have, you're on Dieter, correct? Has anyone been out there?
Doesn't matter.
Twice and hasn't been addressed, or?
They just keep filling it with.
Okay. All right. Maybe they come back out and see what else is going on with that. Okay. John? Okay, thanks, John. He'll come out and they'll take another look at that and see what the problem is, maybe. We've had a few of them have to be readdressed because there's underlying issue with it, so we'll see what's going on. Tate and Lyle, maybe the manager was aware of something happening there. I didn't know that they were actually taking something down. So he's aware of that, and maybe code enforcement can go down and see exactly what they're doing. I was not aware that they were taking anything down. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
The question about the Tate and Lyle property, I can't speak to what is going on the Falls Township portion of that property, but we know what is going on in the Morrisville Borough portion is a small, I believe it's concrete structure that they have not used in years, is being demolished. And they have been doing that with a proper paperwork and permit from the borough. Whether or not they're doing other work there on the Falls Township portion of the property, I couldn't speak to.
Oh.
Are those big silos in Morrisville, or is that Falls Township?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I'd have to check.
Because they're hundreds of feet high. I didn't know if that's the small concrete structure you're talking about.
This is a small, what I saw on their plan was a small ancillary building. It wasn't silos, but they could be doing stuff on the Falls Township portion of their property that I'm not aware of.
I didn't know where the line went.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but if you want, I'll check it tomorrow.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Sure, go ahead.
Hi, is this on?
You have to push that button.
Push the button up.
So long as I spoke, I can't.
Here. Yeah, wait, hold on.
There it is. Hi, can I be heard? Thank you. There was a question about, I was just going to announce this to council tonight, but since it came up about ambulance services, we were very concerned because when the ambulance corps came here, they explained to us, the different ambulance companies, the problem they have with the law. Everyone in the Commonwealth is faced with the same issue. I'm happy to say that one of the representatives from Chester County pushed this bill and the governor signed it. And what it says under the old rules, can I be heard? Emergency medical service agencies could only be reimbursed by insurance companies if they transported the patient, even though time was spent, supplies used, and services provided, regardless of whether a transport took place. This was a significant contributor to the financial challenges facing these ambulance companies, especially with many of them, as we know, facing pending closures. We've seen all over Bucks County and all over the Commonwealth. Act 103, which is the new act, requires reimbursement when transport to a facility does not take place, as long as the following conditions are met: that basic life support or advanced life support unit was dispatched by a county 911 center, and EMS provider must have rendered emergency services, even though the person said, okay, now I don't want to go to the hospital. That was one of the problems that the ambulance companies had. That's not the only problem they had, but that was one of them. That part was addressed and was just passed and signed into law. So I'm happy to talk about that. A couple of other things I want to mention to council and to everybody. In light of the unfortunate school shootings and other shootings, I think there was one a couple of weeks ago of at a public meeting. Someone shot up a public meeting. We all know about it upstate. They now changed the law was changed for executive session. That can now be discussed in executive session. Any security measures, anything to do with security, securing the meetings and what have you, that is now an exception to the Sunshine Law for obvious reasons. You don't want to let people who have bad intentions know your plans. So I was going to mention that. And there's a number of, there was another one I wanted to mention about, and obviously the police know about this, but disabled parking spots for people who are disabled or disabled veterans and others. The zebra stripes and the other markings next to those, people don't realize, maybe they do, that's also not permitted to be parked in. And they made it very clear. There's a new act, Act 144, that was just passed, and it also makes it illegal to park there. Because the idea is if somebody's handicapped or disabled, they need to get their wheelchairs out. They need to be able to, they need the room around. The reason those stripes were there is they need the room to get out safely and comfortably. So that was another law that was just passed. And there's a few others, but I think that's all.
Okay.
Madam President, that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know all that. It's nice. Sure.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Just one more comment, Madam President, related to something said during public comment. If you actually look at the police budget, their legal expenses for 2019, their budget is the same amount that they're budgeted for in 2018. What I think people might be confused about is later towards the end of the police budget, there's a line item for non-budgeted consulting and investigative services that hasn't had money funded in it for the last couple of budget years. In fact, I was the one who proposed using that line for things like grievances, arbitration, et cetera. And I'm subsequently the one who took that line back down to zero.
Oh, okay. But I remember the chief asking why it was in there, and we figured it's what that was for. So he said it wasn't necessary. But obviously you took that back out. So that's the reason it was removed. But there is money in that budget for attorney, correct?
Their primary line item for legal, it says, my magnifying glass with me, legal expenses, police matters. It's the same amount that proposed for 2019 that's budgeted for 2018.
That's what I saw. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
So just to clarify then, the chief did not request that be reduced to zero, just so I understand?
At the budget meeting, he said he didn't know why that was in there. It wasn't necessary. He didn't feel we needed that in there. That's what he stated at the meeting. So that's why Scott had put it in, was because of any kind of grievances that would be non-budgeted you would need. But it was, if you want to call it a line that if we could have had it, you would need that. Because if you have any grievances, that's above what you have set aside. So it has to come from somewhere. Okay. But it was stated that he didn't know why it was put in there. Yeah.
All right, just for clarification, thank you.
Pulled it out.
Well, I believe it was requested by the police chief to go from 65 to 25, but it looks like legal expenses, we've already gone over budget in this line item, and it looks like, is that what you're talking about, the $4,000? Do you not recommend to increase that for a year that we have a police contract?
Well, that hasn't been done in the past, but it's certainly something we could do. We're proposing to leave it as the same as it was in 2018.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next stuff. These are actually just answers to some of the questions being brought up to the public comment. There's no minutes coming up for approval that we've gotten so far, I believe, right? We're okay with that. Finance, you're going to get your treasurer's report, so you look it over. That's the running budget as to where you are on expenditures and revenues. So every month you get that, you're going to see this coming closer to lining up your numbers because you're going to get more stuff coming in on that last one. It always runs a month behind. And then we'll have the bill list you'll get next week, so please look that over. If there's anything that you spot on there that you want an answer for, please contact the administration about it, and they'll get those answers for you. The mayor's not here to do a report tonight, or junior council report, so we'll go by that. So we're going to move on to the action items so we can go and discuss these. There isn't anything being voted on tonight. It's just discussion. So we're going to do the first one is the action item, which is 9A, is a motion to approve the payment to Capital Health per the final budget amount that we owe them, which is $5,228. So anyone have any questions on that? That's all, you understand that's all part of that last part of the budget that they get. They get it in increments. 9B is call for motion to approve the 2019 salary schedule, which that's one of those things that was discussed tonight about how many people are on that manning table. Anyone have anything questions or comments they want to talk about that? Yeah, just if anyone has anything they want to discuss tonight. The only thing I'm going to say about this when I'm looking at this between 2018 and 2019 is the amount of officers for 2018 was 10, including the chief. The amount of officers in 2019 is 10, including the chief. And I have to agree with Ms. Berger when she brought that up, that and I actually forgot about that one of our officers unfortunately was injured, and thank God he recovered from that. But he was out for quite a while for his injuries and then was on desk duty for a while. So he wasn't in normal rotation on the street, and it didn't affect our truck enforcement being out there. Just to, put those things out there. It hasn't affected the amount that are on. It's still the 10.
Madam President, sure. Regarding those situations, whether it was an officer that was a position that was open or whether it was an officer that was on the injured list, both of those are obviously undesirable situations and they're temporary.
Sure.
What we're proposing by cutting one of our officers is a permanent situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a quick question. The final budget, I guess, that we just received 6 days ago, it states that the salary increased from the preliminary budget that we got back on November 7th, $21,282, but it should be $42,493. Do you have an explanation for that? Do you know what the discrepancy is there?
Which section of the budget are you looking at?
Police expenditures, line 125. Police officers' full-time salaries, 777-281-0.19. It only increased 21,000. However, if you look at the manning table, it states that it should increase 42,493.
Well, one of the things that was done was with this line was we removed holiday time. And we're using the holiday time line a couple lines below it, which for some reason had stopped being used at some point. But technically, since it's contractual, we felt it should be itemized on its own line. The other is the final budget amount for 2019, the $777,218, would include the 9 full-time positions in the police department, police officer positions.
Are you saying it includes the part-time officers as well?
No, it includes the 9 full-time police officer positions.
I misunderstood.
The other thing I'll address too, I'm just thinking about it, when it comes to the 3% increases, whether anyone realizes that or not, I've been on council for 6 years, and every year, whatever the percentage was that was for anybody that was in the borough was automatically paid to everyone else that was on there. So the manager previously got it, the manager before that got it, the assistant manager got it, and no one said a word. It was part of the procedure. Council does not get, some people thought council get a raise, they do not. That is by state law as to what you have. As far as I'm concerned, we could vote to take it away. I offered to do that a while ago. So that I'll dispel is we don't get any kind of a raise at all. But yeah, it's not public comment. I'm just answering some questions just so I can put it out there. But that's where that comes from. And there's also contracts, they're contractual on there, just like the chief. The chief is under the Police Tenure Act. Whatever the police officers get, he gets. So if they get 3%, he gets 3%. Whatever they get, he gets. So that's contractual all the way across. The borough manager's contract is also the same. So that's where that's coming from. But it's always been in the past. So just everyone knows that. That's where that came from. Okay. Anyone else on this?
Has there been any sort of a discussion or even just to look into whether or not at least the finance director position could be made into a part-time? This is a new position, and I just have to echo what some of the residents have said over the past couple of months. Regardless, we really can't afford to have a full-time finance director, and I don't see how we even need a full-time finance director position. So has it been explored to make this position a part-time position?
I would have to defer that to the manager. I mean, he's the one that says what he needs in there, what kind of work he's doing, and what he covers. So I don't know that I want to critique something that he's telling us that we need. If he came to us and said, I don't feel that a position needs to put in those kind of hours, then I would agree, but I'll let him.
I wasn't asking for a critique. I was asking if that has been explored.
I explored that when I proposed creating the position and ruled it out at that time. That doesn't mean it couldn't be the case at some point in the future.
So ever since we've discussed about cutting the police officer, you haven't gone back to explore that to see if you could do that?
I extensively reviewed every line on the manning table myself at the early start of the budget process back in the summer.
Okay. Did we know we were looking into laying off a police officer in the beginning of the summer?
No, we didn't have any.
Okay, so what I asked was, since we knew that, had you explored looking into bumping down to part-time?
Well, I guess I have, because we've looked at every line item of this budget, including the manning table, probably a dozen times or more since then.
I think,
It's not public comment, please.
well, I would add,
It's not public comment at this time. This is a business meeting, please.
Well, I think that the residents are a little bit frustrated because we haven't had any meetings dedicated strictly to this budget that had the finance director or the borough manager. So I think our residents are actually very frustrated with that, and I have to echo that.
I'm sorry, Ms. Corinne. We had 2 budget meetings scheduled. You left that night. I asked if you wanted the manager to come in the next day and have another meeting, and you left that night and said no. So we didn't schedule that. The last meeting the last meeting we just scheduled, someone decided it was okay to put a post up on the internet that made it unsafe that night, and it got canceled. The manager was sick for an entire week after that to schedule another meeting, and we are now here with the final. So
okay. Well, first of all, this council hasn't been told anything about these alleged threats that were made. I don't know if an assessment was made. I don't know if anything was done. That was only 2 weeks ago. I assume that now it's okay. It's safe for us to be here. We didn't get an okay. Everything's okay. Come on back this time. So we have no idea what happened with that. We have no idea who assessed the threat.
It's at the DA's office. It was sent up to the DA's office. You got the same memo that we all got from the chief, and it went up there.
No,
personally, I think they need to find out who did it. Because I don't care who's putting that stuff up there. If they think it's a joke, if they think it's something from their friends, they're going to pull off a little website that they have and bump it over because it's okay. It's a threat. And it's a threat to anybody that's out in the public, whether it's sitting here in this meeting on the dais or it's sitting out there. It's unconscionable for that to be put out there at all.
So are you saying that you didn't see this threat? Because you said you did.
I saw it on the internet and it was sent over to me. The chief is the one that called and said he was going to look into it that night. Okay. I called that meeting off. I take responsibility for that after conferring with the manager and the solicitor.
Madam President, we have the chief of police at almost every meeting. Our top cop is here.
Correct.
Talk about providing safety. I mean, what more do we need?
I just think, again, this is a thing where something with someone with no law enforcement experience is making these decisions again and again and again, and it's micromanaging.
I'm sorry, is this about the budget? Because I thought that's what we were talking about.
Yes, it is about the budget. Because again, I don't know why we didn't have one meeting dedicated to this budget. And so if we have questions, this is the only time we can ask them.
This is your meeting, Corinne. Point of order with this. Stick to what you're talking about on there.
I'm asking questions.
Ask them. You're asking for a parade at the same time. Ask your questions.
I'm asking for a parade? What does that mean?
Yeah. Come on, just ask your questions. You want to turn this into a show every single time. Ask your questions.
How do I want to turn this into a show? I have questions. Because these are questions that should be asked in the public. The public has a right to hear that.
You're in public. Ask the questions.
We had an executive session also scheduled that evening. What happened with that? That was
It's going to be tonight at the end of the meeting.
We weren't told
personnel.
that. We were not told that.
The manager asked me today to announce that at the end of the meeting because he needs it.
Yeah, you are supposed to announce it before the meeting.
Yep.
So one of my questions is both our solicitor and our engineer has an increase in their fees for 2019. Was that taken into account for this final budget? That's my first question.
Yes.
Okay. So for the code enforcement expenses, we are budgeted for $156,000. However, it looks like we're going to spend approximately closer to $200,000 to $225,000 for this year. So where did that $156,000 come from? And if we hit that at, say, August, like we did this year, are we just going to stop doing that? Or are we going to stop doing code enforcement? Or are we just going to go over budget like we did this year?
No, my plan is to stick to the budgeted amount.
This year, okay.
No, for 2019.
For 29, well, correct. Yeah. For this budget, I should say. We also had an increase in the revenues and sanitation for $37,000. Do you know where that came from? Are you able to tell us that over the top of your head?
From version to version you're referring to?
Correct.
Yes, that's because we converted from projected insurance expenses to actual insurance expenses because we've gotten the actual figures in between those versions.
Can I go back to one thing here? So the estimated amount that we're spending on Keystone for permits and their services, we're sitting as of the end of November at $189,290, and we've collected $127,700 to offset that amount. So let me make sure we're clear on what we're actually spending, because in every past year, well, in the past several years, those permitting fees were 100% going out to a permit company, and we were still paying for the services that we're paying for now, except there was nothing to offset that. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that, because we keep hearing this big number, but no one's talking about the revenue that's offsetting it that we weren't getting prior to this year.
Mm-hmm. So I had a concern also about the Keystone, because I had stated that we did not have a full-time code enforcement person, because I've actually had residents ask me about this, and it was stated that we have the equivalent of 1.5 full-time people in here. But I just want to point out that what I'm assuming is that we were being billed the equivalent of 1.5 full-time code enforcement people, which is basically the same we were billed by our solicitor. And if our solicitor bills us for 60 hours, you wouldn't say that we have the equivalent of 1.5 full-time lawyers sitting downstairs to answer questions. So we are still cutting services to the residents that are coming in here and have code enforcement questions, because again, we're capping it at $156,000. And if we have no way to get that back, if we hit that again in the middle of the year like we did this year, we're going to blow up the budget in that one again.
So you're lumping code enforcement into the UCC plan review. Code enforcement is zoning. Okay, in past years, we had a salary of $97,500. We paid code inspectors, a third-party company, $32,300 and change. So it cost us $130,000. We brought in $43,000, $381 in revenues for a net cost of $86,000.
But we still don't have someone that's here full-time. We need we're a small town, but we're a large borough. We need someone here full-time for this job. And I don't know, there's no reason why we can't have that. Some people are so stuck on the person that did this before. They're not looking at anything else.
So we need a full-time code inspector or code enforcement person, but not a finance director.
Yes, definitely.
And my question,
apples and oranges.
My question would be, we know what the expenses are with Keystone. What would a fully qualified code enforcement officer cost us full-time in-house, all in, per year?
Are you talking about code enforcement that's able to do
fire marshal, UCC,
your fire marshal, your UCC, your building inspections?
Yeah, it's not a $50,000 salary for sure.
No, it's not.
No, but that's what I'm asking. What would the cost be all in for one full-time?
One person have all of those certifications. Mm-hmm. I actually looked it up, and it was well over $150,000.
And one person
But
can't
that's
perform
one person
all those
to
duties.
do everything. Mm-hmm. It's over $150,000.
Okay. Do you have?
And if you
those?
don't believe me, you can.
No, I'd like to.
definitely look at yourself,
I'd like to
but
see your calculations and how you arrived at that. I really would.
I looked it up.
Send it to me, please.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. So I know when Justin figured out the fact that we actually have the equivalent of 1.43 full-time employees. I recalculated, take a 1.43, convert it to a percentage, drop it down 30% to get to 100% or 1.00 employees. What all that boils down to is they're costing $142,000 a year for the one full-time equivalent. So that's what I'm kind of.
That's without the benefit of having someone here full-time.
Right. Was that just salary, or was that with salary and benefits?
That was just a gross, what Keystone was charging us at one full-time equivalent. So that $142,000 would. That's why I asked Danielle what we would be all in for our own code enforcement, just to see kind of how that would balance out. Because our own code enforcement officer would also be entitled to collect those fees and everything that's currently offsetting Keystone.
And we also have to pay Keystone, we have to pay them to come here and sit at our meetings. We have to pay them to prep to come to our meetings.
So is anybody looking to add to the staffing? And if so, are you increasing taxes? Because I don't see how you're doing both. I don't see how you're doing one without doing the other.
Well, how do we pay for Keystone without doing that?
So far this year, it's cost us $61,000, which is a lot less than what it cost us last year, based on the offsetting revenues that you're forgetting to add back in.
Well, no, I'm not forgetting that.
You are.
If you take the $142,000, I don't have the form in front of me, but actually if you take the offsetting expenses against the $142,000 for the one full-time equivalent, we'd be at around $50,000 to $58,000 a year net. Mike?
How? The amount of hours the amount of hours they're putting in with their staff is not one person. So the equivalent hours being worked, as Justin has shown you in math, is 1.4 people. So you need a full-timer and a part-timer to make that happen. So you have your full-timer at your $150,000, we'll call it, but then you still need a part-timer for $30,000 a year? If they have those qualifications, how are you going to get that done with one person with the amount of hours that it's taking this company to do, unless you're suggesting that they're inefficient, and then you'd have to prove to me their inefficiencies, because I don't see it.
And all I'm doing was taking the 1.43 that Justin showed, and because we're being billed over $200,000 a year for that, and like you said, we can subtract the offsetting costs. But if we bring it down to equal, if Keystone was providing the equivalent of one full-time employee, that would be $142,000 a year less the offsetting costs.
But they're not. They're providing us a team of people that have all the credentials we need, including the ability, when needed, to have somebody do a permit for an elevator, which without having somebody on staff 100% of the time to do an elevator. They have somebody available to do to be our fire marshal.
How about fire inspections?
Fire inspections, fire marshal, which Justin, correct me if I'm wrong. It's less than 20 hours for the entire year at this point.
I don't know offhand. I know it's
a
less
very
than 5% of the total billings.
Yeah, it's a very small number. So where in the past we were paying yearly for somebody, the amount of hours that were actually being spent on it were extremely minimal. So you're talking about having an entire team of people that have those credentials, that we're only paying for those credentials when we actually need them. We're not keeping somebody on staff and paying them when we don't have anything for them to do based on their qualifications. That's where the give and take is. If it was just a straight $65 an hour, which we've heard a lot about, and we were just paying 1.5 people $65 an hour when there's times that there's nothing for them to do, I would not be for that. The key is we're paying $65 an hour only, without benefits, only when there's something for that person to do. Now, based on what we have going on, because like we said, we're a small borough with a lot going on, we have a situation where they're working the equivalent to 1.5 people in their hours that they're logging, and those hours are being tracked. This isn't where they're just. There's no backup to show that they're doing these things. Mr. Mitchell, I'm sure, gets a lot of information from them. The permits we all know are coming in. We see the revenue coming in. There's no question that activity's happening right now. The question is, how can we ensure, as a council, and be responsible for hiring an individual that has all of these credentials that, for the most part, we're not even 100% clear on what those requirements are, right? So we need a professional to tell us what those requirements are, which is what Keystone is. We have to ensure that that's being kept up. And by the way, we've shown as a borough in the recent past that we're not good at doing that. So the reality is, for me, unless somebody's going to be up here and they're going to put up a motion to change the manning table, which I don't think we could even do because we already voted on it, I believe. I'm not sure where we're going with this conversation, other than if you want to add somebody, put up a motion. If you want to add somebody, you put up the motion and also explain how we're going to pay for that, and we'll go forward. But as it stands right now, we have a system in place that's working, and year to date, it's cost us $61,000. And they've done a lot of work for that $61,000. So for me right now, that's where I am. I don't know how anybody else on council feels, but I think we need to move forward on this.
Now we're cutting from a little over $200,000 this year down to $150,000 next year in the budget line item.
There was a lot of cleanup, I believe. Mr. Mitchell, would you corroborate that, or?
Yes, that would be an understatement.
So
but yes,
we're playing catch up.
And yes, we're budgeting 156 for next year, and I think we'll hold fairly true to that number.
So we don't need the 1.5 employee equivalent for 2019, since we're reducing the budget by almost $50,000 for Keystone.
You could say it that way, Dave, but
I just did,
Mr. May. But you still have an issue with being able to provide a service to the town that you can ensure that person is qualified to provide. That's number one, right?
Sure.
And number two, the difference here is if business picks up in that area, the offsetting revenue adjusts for the additional time that they're spending.
And that offsetting revenue would apply to an employee as well.
But if it goes in the other direction, right, and there's less to do because there's a change in the market, right, and people are doing less, and there's a recession or anything like that, you now have the responsibility to pay that salary with no ability to offset those hours like you can with a service.
So just to be clear, you don't believe there's enough work here in Morrisville Borough to keep a full-time code enforcement officer busy?
I'm saying I don't know the answer to that without a crystal ball to know how the market's going to be next year for housing. And as somebody in the housing industry, I can tell you that it goes up and down.
Sure.
And the best economists on the face of the earth can't tell you what's going to happen in 6 months. They can tell you what they think is going to happen, but they can't tell you what's going to happen in 6 months.
I agree with that.
So I don't understand. So you're saying that the only time we need a code enforcement officer is when there is a uptake in the, what about blight? What about property? What about spot checks? Things like that. What about snow notices and grass notices? That had nothing to do with the economy. This notion that we wouldn't have enough work for a full-time code enforcement officer is, crazy. We have ordinances that we can't put into place because we need them to do administrative work that we can't afford to pay them to do.
Yeah, no, I was talking more about the permitting. That's kind of where we were going with the fees and everything, right? So, yeah, to your point, there's plenty of that stuff to do, and I believe it is getting done. However, I will again ask, if you're going to look to add a full-time employee, how are you going to pay it? Should we look to do what was done in 2015 and 2016 and forget to budget for, say, the pensions or not pay them at all?
There's no reason to look backward at all. We can look forward.
I'm sorry, I wasn't finished. But so what I'm saying, though, is if you're going to suggest that we hire more staff on top of what we're doing, you need to also suggest where the money's going to come from.
From the Keystone line item for $156,000. That's where my suggestion would be.
Bottom line is get rid of the code company and put somebody in there full-time.
I'm a no on that. Thank you.
I've been saying for the past year and a half.
I know.
And that, I would only agree with that again if we could show that there would be an equivalent cost or less.
And again, there are things that's a revenue that we're not getting because this is we can't afford to pay this company to do this administrative work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have to agree with Mike. The skills set that you're getting from a code company that is trained for all those different positions is going to cost you a lot for a code company, one person being there doing the codes. If this company was charging us twice the amount of money and we weren't getting the kind of work we were getting done, I'd say you'd have an argument. But for me, this isn't an argument. And we said we'd wait it out the year and see where we stand with that. And what we're trending to spend is a heck of a lot less than what we were paying all those years and getting a lot more done. That we're addressing the blight properties for the first time. We haven't had that done before. And these ordinances that were put in place, and some of them I'll give you credit for, Corinne, you brought here because you wanted to do them to clean up some of the things in the town. That's where the Act 90 came in. So we put some of them in place. So we have to work on getting that data together to address some of those things. We're having a real problem with some of these B&B in town that I don't know if you're getting messages from, but I know I am, some of the other council people, and they have a legitimate gripe about it. These are residential.
There's no way for this company to take care of that because we can't afford to pay them to do the administrative work. That's my point.
So if you have nothing in place to begin with, they don't even have the teeth, the code company now, or anyone else. If you hired one person to come in, they would have to get that data together. Where would you get that data? It still has to get put together.
That would be part of. We wouldn't pay extra for that. That would be part of their duties. That would be part of their salary.
You have to pay that salary, right?
Exactly.
Yes, and it would be. Oh my God.
And benefits.
Do you know how many years we tried to get a rental property maintenance data put together with the previous
See, again,
code, and we couldn't get it because that's a lot of work for one person to do, where a company they do that all the time in other towns. This is not rocket scientists. They do it all over. It's just that we have to get that lined up in place to be able to start doing that.
He sat here, the gentleman from Keystone sat here and basically said it's going to be too much money. And Mr. Mitchell even said, how about, throwing us a bone here and doing it for free? He was like, no way. He sat here 6 months ago and told us that.
He did our fee schedule review.
Yeah, but we paid for that.
Exactly. And that was worth doing it because we were running a deficit every year because it was never done to make sure that we were covering our administration costs inside. We weren't. It was never done properly. It was never an analysis done. So that $1,200 we paid for that was worth every penny to make sure that our codes were up where they should be and they could administrate them properly and pay our staff that has to do that filing for us.
That
It's all
is separate and
part of it.
apart from what I'm talking about, Debbie.
It's all together. That's what's under that. That's what you're paying for and all that. That
No.
money that you collect
No,
pays for
6
all
months
that.
ago. No, we're not talking about the same thing. He sat here 6 months ago and said, I cannot do that. We're not going to do this paperwork. He even brought us another ordinance that he wanted us to enact. And basically said, it's going to cost you guys a lot of money. It's a lot of administrative work. And then we all shrugged our shoulders and he went away. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the permits. I'm talking about the administrative work for the Act 90 and for this B&B ordinance that you're talking about that we cannot enact because they can't do it because it's too much money for them to do that.
Well, that's actually one of the things I was going to bring up tonight because people are calling about it. Are we going to put something in place? So you're saying we're not going to be able to do that, or you're going to be able to do that and hire somebody who's going to be able to get that across the finish line? Is that what you're saying? You're willing to do that? Get rid of this company and get someone full-time in here, and they're going to be able to pull that off? You're going to put that ordinance in, and they're going to be able to get that data together?
Again, they if they're a salaried person,
show
they
me how
sit
you'd
in
be
that
able to
office
get that
until it
done.
gets done.
I don't see it. Sure.
What about if we empanel one of our many committees to take this up for discussion and do some research and collect some data and bring a recommendation back to the council?
You're talking about the rental? Getting that
I think that's a fair point. Why
you've got a
can we
couple things
ask
to-
the finance director to do that?
right now,
Got a
please.
couple things to look at. One is the fire safety inspections that were enacted last year that still isn't fully implemented. You've got the rental program issue that I believe is what Councilwoman Chronicle's referring to.
One of them, yes.
And also you have the Airbnb issue, which the solicitor provided you a draft ordinance a couple of months ago about for your consideration. So there's three things. They're all policy. They're all related to code enforcement. Maybe an ad hoc committee or maybe one of the existing committees could dig into this, drill down on it, and come back to council with a recommendation.
So do we refer this over to maybe the policy committee? Would they want to take this on to get any of that, Chair? Is this something you would want to be interested in looking into
That's fine.
on the rentals? And some of these ordinances, I guess, see how we could get the information. Maybe, I don't know, contact some other towns who have them in place, get some information off of them on how they put together their data program on that. You'd have to, you'd have to set up a meeting when that's probably after the holidays when it's available for you guys to advertise that, when you want to do that.
Is the policy committee first meeting in 2019? Do we know off the top of our heads?
No, I don't. I don't know.
I'm going to say February or March.
Is there something more pressing on its agenda than this issue? Perhaps we could add it to the agenda.
No, this will get priority.
Okay, all right. All right, but on the action items, we're in the middle of talking the budget. We went from the salary thing right into the budget, so we might as well hit the tax levy ordinance at the same time. That's something you'll be voting on. Anyone that's new on the council, that I'm sure you all understand that, but just in case, it's the actual tax rate ordinance that you have to put in along with your budget. It states how much you're levying the tax, which the total amount is 46.85.
And that's a zero increase, correct?
Right, zero increase, right, on the taxes. But that is something you're going to vote separately. That's what that 2019 tax levy ordinance is. Okay. Anybody have any other questions at this point on this budget stuff or something they want to ask about?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Under public property, labor, public works, maintenance, building, we have it for last year as 10,000. It looks like we've so far spent less than 5, but we're budgeting for next year for 10,300. Is there a project in particular that we're looking to do with the building, or? Anybody?
That's a labor line for Public Works maintenance, and it was requested by the Public Works Superintendent to more accurately reflect his budget and where his guys are spending time.
Is that something where at the end of the year it's more because of snow and things like that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it can be weather driven, certainly,
Okay.
sure.
And I did have some questions in the police budget, which seems to be cut up fairly well. Under, let's see, labor, special traffic enforcement, I guess we have nothing there. Your budget at $200, and is that just something that we don't ever use?
I'm sorry, could you?
014100138.
138. Yeah, actually, I don't believe that line has been in use.
Okay, how about the next line for special events? It looks like we've spent almost $1,000, but there's nothing in that line item for 2019?
Right. That's because that's a reimbursement. So what comes in goes out.
Gotcha.
And it's typically not borough funds anyway.
How about the training? 014100176. It was cut in half.
That's correct. That was a cut.
Is there any concern about that? It's training. Did you talk to the police chief about this? I mean,
Of course, I've had many conversations and meetings with the police chief about his budget.
Okay.
And actually, I believe what we're budgeting for 19 is consistent with where we are year to date on that line.
And then I do have a concern with the legal expenses. I'm not really certain why we're only budgeting $4,000 again with the contract year for the police department. That especially since this year we're almost at 7,000 and this is not a contract year.
Yes, it is.
For 2018?
Yes, we're in contract negotiations with the police now.
So if we go into 2019, are we okay with the 4,000?
We're hoping we'll be finished soon and it won't affect 2019, but I can't guarantee you that. And it's been the borough's past practice in budgeting to not add to that line in negotiating years.
Okay.
Do we have potential arbitration in 2019 relating?
Possibility.
I also had a question about 014107006. The police pension reserve has gone from 50 to 30.
Correct.
Is that in a different line item, or what's the reason that was?
Well, actually, the pension contribution comes from multiple lines. This line has been a reserve, and it actually has not been used at all in, 2 years, 3 years, I think. So this is actually our attempt to true up. If we actually needed it, it would be there, but it doesn't need to be what was there last year.
Okay.
And this is based on what we've already received from the pension plan administrator.
Gotcha.
So then if it wasn't used, it would be like a contingency
Right.
cushion in the police budget.
Yep. Fortunately, your police pension is near 100% funded, not quite. And of course, the civilian side is 100% funded. So our pensions are in pretty good shape. Of course, you get state aid in order to do that. So the borough has been very responsible with its state aid and keeping its pensions up to date.
Under sanitation for the insurance and the salaries, did that just decrease because we have a solid number now?
Yeah, that was just because of various insurances. Yeah.
Okay. For the library fund, I'm not seeing how that balanced. Is that are we gonna?
There's a slight surplus projected for the library fund, which would not be a bad thing given we need a new roof over there badly, but it's certainly not enough to pay for a new roof.
I think that it's actually that we have a responsibility to spend a certain percentage on new books, materials. I think it's actually law, and I don't think that we're hitting that under maybe 04456-201. I think we have to spend, I think we had to spend almost $30,000 on new books. So I'm concerned that we might lose any sort of state funding that we get if we don't hit that. So I would just.
I can check that, but these numbers were verified with the librarian.
Okay.
Can you repeat that line item, please?
I don't know if my question is actually, it's the state law states materials, and the new books is 04456-201. It's currently at 15,000. It was decreased from 26,000. Now, again, I think the law states materials, but I
believe you're correct. So I think other purchases, AV supplies and things would factor into material, but we can double check these numbers with the librarian. We already did once, but we'll do it again.
Okay.
Or policy.
Under the purchase of new equipment, it was increased about $17,000.
Where?
Let's go to 05454-509. These don't have page. Oh, page number
No.
15. 15. They do have page numbers.
Yes, 15.
Do we have new equipment lined up for 2019 that we are looking to buy? Do you know?
509, right?
Correct. Purchase of new equipment.
I think this is a public works line. Micah, can you just confirm that for me?
John's trying to say something from the.
I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Is he earmarked for anything in particular, John? Okay.
I think he basically tries to budget some amount every year in case something breaks and he has to replace it.
And it looks like the rec fund also does not balance.
That's right. There's projected to be a slight surplus in the rec fund.
Makes sense to me.
Wednesday, you're allowed to speak. Wednesday, February 13th is the first advertised date of the policy committee.
February 13th?
Wednesday, February 13th. So if you're not going to be out buying your Valentines, come to the policy committee meeting.
Thank you, Virginia.
It's better than last year's. It was on Valentine's Day.
Was it?
Yes, it was.
Ooh.
Yes.
That's called bad scheduling.
Love policy.
Okay. Yes.
90.
Okay, we're going to move on to that? Okay, hold on.
Does anyone else?
Let me gather my wits here.
I have a general question, actually, regarding the budget and what we have planned for next year. We're obviously struggling to get this budget balanced. We have wage increases and things like that coming forward next year. How are we going to prevent being in the same situation next year? I mean, is the answer going to be the same cut? Or I've put up a plan of an EIT along with fiscal responsibility. I know that wasn't popular, but I'm just wanting to know what our plan is for the future to resolve these issues. Madam President?
Well, I don't know. I mean, at some point, you can't say you're not going to raise the taxes because you might have to. but at this point, I think we're doing the best we can with this budget. In 2019, we're just going to have to watch what our spending is and see where else we can pull the revenue. So like I said, maybe some of the development will happen, where you can get some of the money in from that. But as far as I know, you're at that point, the council have to make a decision. They tabled that for the EIT. We're not comfortable with it. Maybe next year you can sell that if that's the case. But that's not helping right now. And if you did it right now, it wouldn't help with 2019. It would take that long to go in. And I know you're passionate about that, Dave, but you're not going to get the vote from most people here.
Well,
next year you might be able to sell that.
For 2019, had we put it in, we would have benefited $280,000, and that was the amount that people are already paying to other municipalities would have came here immediately.
Yeah, and like I said, I tried to see how council felt about it. You saw how that went. I deliberately put it up to see where it would stand for you, and it got tabled. So it isn't something that they were going to go for. Now, like I said, at some point, it may be like the school.
My question is, what's the plan going forward?
I don't know. Council's going to have to decide that, see where we stand with all this stuff.
So as of right now, there is no plan.
No, do you have one outside of raising the taxes?
Oh, yeah, I gave one.
Well, then maybe you're going to sell that with everybody to do that.
But you just also admitted your plan really nobody liked.
Well, yeah.
You didn't get any good feedback on it, so we're going to have to brainstorm and come up with a plan.
Yeah, I think there are probably more people in favor of that now that they realize the fact that we do need to increase our revenue. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Well, like I said, we're at 30 mills. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to be raising the millage and you're going above that, where you got to go to the judge to get it, by law, by statutory law, you can only go then to 5. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, you would have to do an EIT because you can't go any more than that. That's kept by the state.
No, I would still recommend the EIT for sure.
You would probably have to do both at some point if you were talking that kind of revenue. Mm-hmm. But for me, there was never been any kind of really substantial cut that you could do or look back on what you could fix in order to straighten those things out first. And for me, this is a transition year for that. Just like seeing how the code company would work out as compared to having somebody in. What is the savings for that? If it's not, then you make a change. So that's what we're doing at this point, to see where we can make some of those changes. In the future, council's going to have to make that decision. And it may be a hard decision, and people may not like it. So can we say we're never going to raise taxes? No, we can't. Nobody can say that because we don't know where you're going to stand with all that. Absolutely.
Well, I hear the term fiscal responsibility, and, we bring in a finance director at $75,000 that's not budgeted in the line item. So 100% of that salary went directly towards our deficit.
You keep going after this, the finance director, and everybody does. That's the big thing. Get rid of him and all your worries are going to go away. Part of his salary, and we mentioned this before, comes out of the MMA to pay for that. And there's no other person in the borough that seems to be targeted. Their position isn't that important,
So you're saying the MMA is paying for the finance director?
Part of that gets paid by that, and that was told by you. I don't know. Yeah, through the voucher. Correct. The voucher system.
That's not an accurate statement.
It comes out of MMA revenues.
So it comes from the revenue we get
out of our revenues through the MMA.
Right.
They're not paying a portion of his salary.
Correct. It comes out of the stipend that we get paid from that.
Right. Well, my point is we're looking to cut a police officer. It's going to save about $43,000 according to the Manning table. And, we have this salary that we put in without a line item. That's not fiscal responsibility.
And the police officer's salary for the first year, what that's going to escalate. It's not just the savings for this year. It's a big saving. They get a big bump after 3 years. And I could see if we were doing something that was going to affect the Manning table, but we actually looked at that and said, we can't make those kind of cuts. So I think we did the best we could with what we had to. As far as the finance director, we need someone in there that's going to handle that. And the manager before that worked full-time. He was not part-time. And he even said it was very tough because you got to do all those different things down there, including we had the treasurer that was stipend over to help on our side, but he still had many of those things to do. And he still had trouble with the budget. So we need someone that's going to make sure that we're compliant with what we need to with the law, so we're not getting sued by the IRS because people don't know how to do the quarterly files that need to be done because they're not trained properly for it. So we need to have that in place. That's just my opinion. We need someone handling those finances.
Suggestion.
Sure.
If I may make a suggestion, Madam President, Virginia, when is the first scheduled Finance Committee meeting in 2019? April 25th. Perhaps we could implore upon the chairman to make the EIT an agenda item at his meeting.
I would be happy to do that. We did that once before. It turned into we're implementing an EIT, so I'll be clear that we will be happy to discuss it and vet it further. I think we spoke about it for about a good half hour, I think.
Yeah, that was on video. That's posted.
And hopefully, you know, if you help me remember, we'll get some updated data from the EIT tax collector in Bucks County on some projections of what it would translate to if adopted here.
We can do that.
So you're just suggesting to update the information for the EIT?
Yes, and to give at least the committee an opportunity to consider the merit of an earned income tax, unpleasant as it may sound.
Well, we did that in April.
Yes.
So revisit.
A revisit.
Okay.
Sometimes in government, it's not the first conversation where something sparks and happens. Sometimes it's the 211th conversation where something sparks and happens. Understood. You just have to be persistent and keep the dialogue going as to what our options are.
Okay. At this point, we'll also, there's only a couple more items that are on the action items. 9E and 9F are for the Green Light Go programs for traffic control devices. I think you weighed in on this before, didn't you, Scott, with this, on what they actually, the purpose for them? It was, because I thought it was for the, to have them adapted for generators and stuff, but I saw that was in another grant. So these ones here were for what control devices?
This is to replace the signals.
Actually replace them?
Yes.
Okay.
It would get new signals, and in particular at the one location, Pennsylvania and Philadelphia Avenue, it's a pathetic state of affairs, I'm sad to say, because that traffic control device is actually being operated on by a computer system that's on loan to us from one of our contractors.
Oh.
Otherwise, the police department would probably have to make that a four-way stop until we're able to get something done there.
Oh, wow.
So unfortunately, these signals are old and they've, exceeded their useful life, and we need to do something about them.
Because I know last year, and I have to look back on the engineer's report, but I believe he might have been, it's either in the works or he was talking about putting it back in the works, was a grant, I think it was also through maybe the Green Light program, was actually when we had that storm and all the power went out and there was like nothing downtown and they were trying to do the four-way stops and the whole bit, is none of these lights that we have were ever adapted to hook in generators, and we don't have generators.
Well,
so,
we're looking at not only a battery backup as the initial fail-safe, but also ports for portable generators as a secondary, and also to add preemption to the traffic control devices for emergency service vehicles.
Okay. All right. So I think that one's actually in the works too.
Madam President, if I may.
Yes.
If I may.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell, I correct me if I'm wrong when we spoke about this, and I just want everybody to hear it. You had mentioned that at least one of the stoplights was being controlled by a computer that we borrowed.
Yeah, that's the one I just spoke about.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. Other people were talking.
Pennsylvania and Philadelphia Avenue.
Thank you.
I have a question, 9E, 9F, 9G. These are three. It says we commit municipal resources to a total of $321,559. Is this for 2018 or is this for 2019?
These would not be, if we were awarded E and F, they would be paid in 2019. G is grant money for a project that council has already approved.
Right.
So
that's the bid amount, 9G, per the borough engineer's recommendation, which was in your packet.
Right. So the 66 and the 85, is that in our budget for 2019? Because I know you said that we were basically going to look at 3 grant requests we're shooting for 3 for 2019 to try to keep those costs down.
Yeah, we're shooting for 3 applications in 2019. But yes, we do have line items identified where our matching funds would come from if we were awarded the grants.
Can these matches, can they come out of any of the street funding that we have? Or no? Where would that, for any of the traffic stuff?
Yes, some of them can, yeah.
Okay.
How many of the grants this year were not budgeted? And I'm not referring, of course, to something like Patriots Park, which was a carryover. Yeah, that would be my question. How many of the grants that we did this year were not budgeted?
You mean the grant applications the borough applied for?
The grant application, related engineering inspection fees, and any matching funds.
None of them were budgeted.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, since Corinne brought that up, 9G is the motion to award the historic summer seat accessibility improvement projects to start that, and that is through a grant, and they won the bid to do that in according to the borough engineer. The last action motion in 9H is part of our budget that we pay out to the Morrisville Senior Center. We give them $3,000 per the 2018 budget allocation, so that's what that last one is.
Madam President, you kind of jumped over 9G quickly. I have a question for the
I'm
borough
sorry.
manager.
I was just reading them through, but yeah, get back on it.
What's our grant amount or budget amount as compared to the bid that came in?
I don't recall off the top of my head. That was in your Friday packet, the packet from the borough engineer.
I have it right here.
Did you have it? Yeah, I might have brought it.
Which one are you looking for, Justin? I'm sorry.
The one that we just got.
Historic summer seat accessibility improvements. And remember, that's a DCED grant, so there is no borough match required on that.
Yeah, Patriots Park is actually.
Funds requested was $560,000.
Right, but CDBG doesn't have borough matches to them. Yep. Yeah.
Are you talking
So it's
about?
200
That's the one that's
$230,000 we were awarded.
Right. Out of that money.
I was looking at the wrong one.
And that's what's being used for.
No, I think we were awarded $230 on a $500,000 application, or $500,000 and change.
Correct.
So if we have 230,000 and we came in at 170, does that mean we can increase the scope at some time to use up remaining funds? Or do they also pay for our engineer to be out there and supervise and inspect?
Well, yes, the engineering costs can be charged against the grant. But remember, this is only phase 1 of that project because we didn't get the entire amount we applied for. So if there is residual money left over, we will request that the county allow us to use that towards whatever portions of phase 2 we possibly can.
Okay.
Anyone else on that one for Patriots Park? Okay, well, I had mentioned to the manager about bringing up under the unfinished business was with short-term rental ordinances, a resolution for it, so that's been referred over to policy committee. Also take a look at that stuff, and as to how we would implement that. So I guess that's what I'm going to tell the residents. It's somewhere in the works down the road. I'm sorry.
Whenever you think it's a good time for me to.
Oh, yeah, you can bring that up. Sure, you want to do that right now?
Madam President, can I ask a quick question, though?
Sure.
Why is it mutually exclusive to have the plan for implementation along with the approval of the ordinance? Couldn't we approve the ordinance and work it reactively while we're working out a plan to proactively work it?
I thought that too, but that's one of the complaints that Ms. Chronicle is saying, that why vote for something like that when you haven't set up how you're going to put the program in?
I would personally like it on the agenda. Anybody else?
I think it should be in place because there's some B&Bs that are identified and should be addressed. And
it could be worked reactively as the complaints come in. But without that being in place, there's no leverage to act.
Correct. The code company was actually asking for assistance with that.
Correct.
B&B ordinance?
We the one for short term, yeah, B&B and rentals. They put one in place in Lower Makefield, and you all got the information for that to review.
Oh, okay. So it would have to be okay because advertising. So it would have to be January.
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah. It wouldn't be right now, but
all right.
Yeah,
You have advertising requirements.
but maybe the policy committee, you could probably do that, but then the policy committee definitely in their first meeting, if you could look into maybe other towns and how they're implementing it, what it took to get that implemented, what kind of program they put in order to do a database and what that entailed, you know. Wait, oh,
Sweating.
okay.
It's not that hot.
Yeah, okay, you want to speak about that now, Scott?
Yes, if I may, if this is a good time. Council members received in their packet on Friday a quotation from IPS Group, which is a planned and professional parking metering company. This was something that came up. This is not for a decision tonight or this month or this year, but just for discussion purposes. They had proposed a kiosk pay station for the approximately 60 parking space municipal parking lot behind the Stockham building. This is what it would cost to implement the kiosk pay-by-space technology. Personally, I'm on the fence about this, but I said I would pass the information along to council, and if the borough was interested, we would follow up with the company for more information. So if council members have any questions about this, I'd be happy to speak to you tonight or offline. If this is something the council wishes for us to explore, we certainly can.
Just a quick question on that. Is that a yearly price or is that a one-time $6,000?
Well, it breaks you down under the description over the amount of it that is for installation of the technology, including the installation cost, the shipping cost, and then in terms of the management of the back office technology, it's based on cents per credit card transaction per month, blah blah blah. So it gives you that breakdown if that's something we wish to explore. Now, I can also tell you there are umpteen vendors out there who provide the same service. So if this is something that you wished for us to explore, we would, of course, get multiple proposals. This just happens to be one.
And if I can make just a quick comment on it, because I spoke to you about it when I saw it in the packet. To me, I see this as something that just pushes more people into parking into the street, which I don't really think benefits us. I think it'll alleviate some people parking behind the Stockham building, and it'll push them right out to the street where they can park for free.
And there's people that live above the building, so how does that, don't they have
Talked
parking
about that.
spaces
They
or
would be able
something?
to get a monthly permit, but again,
For people who are regulars or who live there, I mean, that's not their designated parking space. That's free municipal parking at the moment. But they could purchase a, permanent pass, long-term pass at a much discounted rate than what somebody would be paying just to use it on a day-by-day basis.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice.
Okay, for me, I think I'd have to think on that. I don't know what the financial benefit is as compared to what you're putting out and how it all would work. So I think I'd want time to take a look at that.
My concern would be, how would we enforce it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because you've got stores there. So if you've given even like a permit for a resident, then what happens when somebody is shopping there, parks there? Is that something else that the police would have to enforce at that point? Is there a fine for, how do you enforce if you put that in?
That's a concern.
Just as for instance, part of the connectivity package could include where when a space expires, it actually would send a message to the police department through their mobile data terminal that had occurred. So then a police officer could just take a whirl through that parking lot. But just for instance.
Okay.
I don't really think people are spending that much time there where they would need a kiosk and have to put their credit cards in there. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people are in there 5 or 10 minutes and they're gone.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it would be more problem than it would be,
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, I'm not real on board with that, at least not right now.
It does generate revenue, and there are ways to have permits for residents. I mean, Jersey City, which is where I work, has the same thing. They have permit parking, they have kiosks, they have designated areas, and but they also have a parking authority with hundreds of employees to enforce this. So
Yeah, I think
my only concern is enforcement. I mean, I've been to the municipal lot, and it's usually packed, and it's usually packed with vehicles that really shouldn't be there. So parking for the businesses is troublesome at best. I think it would benefit them. And as far as using your credit card or debit card, I mean, you can get as little as 15 minutes on your debit card without any additional fee to you. And cashless, purchases is the way everybody does it and the wave of the future. So it's not,
Yeah, not to
coin
say.
meters are
Yeah.
a dinosaur.
Yeah, like, yeah, New Hope did it, but the same, yeah. So at a small municipality, I don't
And
know.
as downtown improves, it's something you want to consider so that you don't have, spots taken
Right.
up all day so that people can go in for 15 minutes
Right.
to go to a business or get a haircut or get something to eat and move traffic along.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's something that we would
It's
do
something
now.
I don't think at this moment.
Yeah,
We're
it's
still struggling.
maybe
trying
something
to-
for 2, 3, 5 years from now
Yes,
to
exactly.
think about.
Okay, all right. Okay. There's no new business. Under borough officials, the only thing first I'll just mention is under the grants. You all got a memo from the DCNR, from the secretary from the DCNR and Governor Wolf, that we were granted the $50,000 grant from DCNR for the master plan for Williamson Park, which we weren't expecting, which was kind of nice. And they contacted Scott and let them know that, and then they forwarded that email. The memo to me that I gave to you guys. So that was really nice. Also, we did receive the grant funding for the Walksworth Works program that we just applied. We actually were top on the list to get that. And that was a requested amount of $16,293.57. Borough matches $2,875.34. Also, just want to mention, I also was contacted by the engineer. He wanted to get together with everyone, got a basic concept a view of Patriots Park, and they researched passive parks and basically what they would have in them. So he was asking for me to sit down with him with basically an advisory committee to bring this stuff back to the council. So I reached out to Mr. Parker and Eileen Dreisbach, Mr. Dreisbach, to be on that advisory committee to me. We're going to meet, as far as I know, just this one time. On the beginning is December 18th, basically just to review what they have that everyone already has. And we'll go over it. They'll also probably talk about stormwater management, things that would go on down there. And then we will bring all that information back to the council for consideration and your input and review. And it would also then be sent for the MEAC, who does environmental, and also to our Recreation Advisory Committee to also look over. In January, I would suggest that in the beautification meeting, we can hold as an open meeting, and the subject could be Patriots Park, and we would then have a more strategic plan on what the council has looked at, and then the public can also see it. And so far, there's some things I think that need to be retweaked. There were, part of it was in Summer Seats area, which I think they have to adjust some of those things, but it basically is a passive park, just beautiful trees and seating, and there's no buildings, no huge buildings or anything, because it's under a conservation easement. But I just want to let everyone know, and I thank Mr. Parker for getting back to me and Ms. Dreisbach, and then we'll bring that information to the council. There also, like we said, I'm sorry, I should have announced in the beginning, there is an executive meeting. There's no voting. The manager asked for this for personnel, so we will close the meeting down, and then we'll have the executive meeting after that. Is there anyone else, Norm?
Yeah.
Officials wants to?
If you don't mind, Madam President, I just wanted to give council a quick update. I had reached out to the redevelopment authority in reference to some of the properties that were deemed blighted. The 2 properties on Park Avenue that were involved in a fire were pushing almost 2 years ago now. That seems to be moving forward. They were waiting on a form from council and a couple other pieces of information. I'm sorry, from the borough, not from council. I forwarded that information over to our borough manager, and that is moving along nicely. The other properties that were deemed blighted have had notifications sent out from code enforcement, and we will be taking the next steps on those soon.
When's the next, you probably know offhand, the vacant property is
I
the
don't know
beginning of the
offhand.
year?
Yeah, it's the beginning
Okay.
of the year.
Probably around the same time as finance, something like that? Okay. Anyone else during?
I just have a question, either you, Ms. Smith, or Mr. Mitchell. Can you elaborate on the master plan grant that we got? What's the process going to be for developing master plan? Is it just going to be 100% the engineer is going to do everything? Is the council going to be involved?
For
How's it going to
Williamson
work?
or for Williamson? I don't really know. He usually, do you know what he's doing down there?
There's not only council involvement, but there's usually public participation component. They're fairly elaborate in how they're done, or they're not really recognized by the people that you want to use them with. So you have to follow the set process, and the borough engineer will do that.
Okay. Can we have him put something out of what the process is so that we know ahead of time?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I have one item. On the list of meetings, it says that there's a Recreation Advisory Board meeting on Thursday night. There is not. It was probably an oversight. Last month, I had said that we would not have one in November or December, and the next one is January. Yeah, but there will not be one Thursday night.
On the website,
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, most of those ones that fell during the Christmas and holiday season, we try not to have them because most people can't
Can I
attend them.
ask a quick question about the rec board? We haven't received anything, so I don't know if, because I think the rec board is supposed to have their own kind of secretary, president, all that stuff. I don't know if that's been done, but I think the rec board was also, the meeting was also canceled in October. Is there just not, are people unavailable? Is there a reason it was, the last 3 have been canceled?
We don't have anything going on right now. We have a list of items that we'd like to do, but nothing for the winter. So we are planning on having a meeting in January to work on things for the spring and the summer. We already have the Easter parade set up. And we're going to be discussing that in January.
An Easter parade? Is that separate?
In
and
the
apart?
park.
Is that separate and apart from what the Rotary Club do, or is that?
No, it will be combined with the Rotary.
Yeah, I think they're coordinated with them to do a parade.
Don't look like
I have one item. Mayor Ravella put out some documents that we all got in our packet regarding the police department and the number of docketed court cases comparing Lower Mayfield, Morrisville, and Yardley. Lower Mayfield had 2,438 criminal, non-traffic, and traffic. They have 40 full-time officers, which works out to about 60 per officer. Morrisville had 3,572 docketed cases. With our 16 officers, that's 223 per officer. We have a small but very, very busy department. So I would implore council again to reconsider cutting our police department and not do that. Again, if we look at the other memo that he sent out, were police radio calls coming into our borough through December 1st, 2018. There were 9,671. Again, if you divide that by the 16 officers we have, that's 604 per officer. Compared with Lower Mayfield Township, which had 14,433 radio calls and their 40 officers, that's only 360 calls per officer. That's half. So we have a very busy little police department, and I would just encourage council to reconsider any cuts to that department. I think we need every man that we can get. I posted online, the national averages were 50% below national average. The FBI says that we should have about 20 full-time officers. I know we're never going to be able to afford that, but we're already 50% below national average. And to cut 10% of our full-time officers, that's what it is, it's 10%, I think is unwise. And we are in a unique situation here with Route 1. We have 80 to 90,000 vehicles per day that go by Route 1. And we're a stone's throw from Trenton with 2 footbridges connecting us. So when you look at towns like Yardley Borough, they don't have that connection. I think it's an unwise move, and I just ask council to please reconsider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one thing, if everybody else is
Sure.
finished. There had been a resident who had brought up the what they believed was a sewer leak down by the Beer Mart, which is technically Falls.
Yeah.
She had also done an email, but I had had some problems with the Outlook, and some things bounced back. So I don't really know who saw what. But I had reached out to the director of the MMA, and in short, it wasn't sewage on our part. It wasn't a water leak on our part. It was actually one of the businesses uphill from that location that had accidentally, during ground testing, pierced their own water line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was seeping down. And it's been fixed, and the groundwater in the area is beginning to dry up. So hopefully that was it. So, but it wasn't sewer water, and yeah, it was clean water. So
Ted, was it the business that she was complaining on behalf of?
I didn't want to name them, but yes.
Okay. Yeah, John and Gus are both
it happens. They did the right thing. They were testing for petroleum leakage and accidentally hit their own.
I'm glad they got resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know. Yeah, I did send an email back to her, and I said you were having a problem with your Outlook, but I did tell her that I agreed with you that you were sending that off to the MMA. They did look at it. I even spoke with John. John said they were out several times. They knew where the issue was, just not what was going on.
I personally made a trip out there. Got out and walked in it, and you could tell it wasn't sewer.
Yeah, she was just frustrated, but we couldn't make her understand.
No, I agree, and then
it wasn't us that could handle it.
I'm grateful that the director got back to me with a detailed answer.
Good, thank you. That takes care of that for her. Anyone else? Okay, then I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion's adjourned.
Yes, if council would like to take a quick recess to utilize facilities or whatnot, or make a phone call. We're only going to be about 10 minutes anyway, so I'm sorry to hold you.
Our kids need it.
Yes, they do, absolutely.
Talk to Wanda, Wanda's answer your questions. Got one, we're good. SRO. No.